Welcome, Anupama. We can't wait to hear this beautiful talk on rethinking urban materiality, time as a resource. Welcome.
Good morning. So I thought of discussing materiality, not because materiality is at the essence of architecture. I think architecture actually lies in the void. We actually inhabit spaces that we didn't build. But the problem of materiality in our times is a very big problem because the culture of building, especially post-industrial building habits that we have taken over from other areas that have in the world, the developed countries that have undergone mainstream urbanization, mainstream industrialization that affected a certain building culture and building norms and all those things, that has led to an impact all over the world where the materiality has become a social, environmental, as well as economic problem and has created all the imbalances we are talking about today. And therefore, I think we need to rethink materiality, and especially in the age of climate change. I think what I want to say for Indian context particularly, because we all have a culture already, even in the global culture that we are today, we all, in our food habits, in our clothes habits, and everywhere, we are still connected to the local materiality compared to many places in the world. And I want to begin with an image where the kind of architecture which we have respected in India and actually worldwide, the refinement had to do with how humans engage with the material, not with the material by itself. Today we have a culture of material fetish, and we don't realize where we bring what in from. And when we order building materials directly from the catalogs that are being given to us from certain manufacturers, just like we are doing it with food, with clothes, with everything, we don't realize the large impact of these micro decisions which we are making. And I really want to begin from there and talk about why have I called it rethinking materiality, time as a resource, is because I'm a little bit disturbed that the discussion around green building and materiality has been too much about the material. Again, it's again too much about the material and not enough about how humans engage with the material. And one of the things that I found critical in the industrial development's influence on our building habits is the fact that we had created the notion that time is money, in the West. So in order to save time, we have avoided humans involving themselves in the construction of building, in the sourcing of building material, and in all kinds of things in order to avoid the human and to replace the human with a machine. We have gone out of human scale. We have lost contact with what is local. We don't realize what is the large impact if one person buys one bunch of cement bags for one small house, but we don't think it's a big thing. But if the whole country is doing it, we don't realize the big picture. But I want to remind us that we actually do have the memory that often in India, what we value as excellence in design, we were just admiring those carpets. We haven't gone to the other stalls yet. But often the very good things are time intensive. How much time does it take to make a biryani, Just think how much very good saris and shawls take to make. But we use that shawl forever, beyond generations. The sari is handed down. So if somebody spent days and days making it, whether it's cotton or silk, that's not the only thing. The point is, how have the humans crafted a thing? And what I want to say and make a point here is time is a very important resource. It is not a thing to be avoided. Human time, just to say, let's save time, at what is the cost of saving time? My question is, especially to this developed country culture, what is the cost of saving so much time? Now that you save the time, are you having a better life? Are you more happy? Is there more well-being? Are we devoting that time? Are we not more stressed? What was the advantage of saving time, and how expensive is it to save time? Another point I want to make is that, natural resources are finite, but human resources are infinite. So the way I'm approaching sustainability discussion is to say that if you spend more human resources, you will save natural resources. You save, when you spend more intelligence, more care, more love, it pollutes nothing. The human being evolves. Anthropologists will agree, what we make makes us. That's how we became refined. And now when we don't evolve, we are not more progressive than our ancestors, and that we all know. So this is the point from which I am bringing in that time is a very undervalued resource. Each of us would like to spend it well, but collectively spent well, it would lead to a very different architecture and urbanism. And it includes mobility and everything. If you can liberate human time for producing things, for humans to involve. If you work more, you will have muscles. If you care more, you will have a certain quality of life. So human engagement is not a bad thing. All the stupid decisions are made when the humans withdraw. So I want to show the rest of my work from that lens. So this is an example that you can build with stone, you can build simple, or you can build refined, depending on where it is for how much time we have put at the service. Also, architects have worked beyond the one, we worked over several lifetimes on projects without starting with only ourselves. So these are values we all know, and we should really hold on to them, I feel. And from that perspective, I mean, if you had wood, you built with wood. If you're in a desert, you have to build domes because there are no trees. If you have ice, you build with ice. So there is no reason why humans, Homo sapiens, we need the same things biologically, but according to what is where, we develop ingenuity to use those materials, make them go a long way. Up until 100 years ago, we were building bigger and bigger domes, taller and taller buildings by developing engineering and craft knowledge. Not by saying that now, today those same buildings are not permitted by our own human codes. Although gravity has not changed, neither has the biological species. So we have created a landscape all over the world where that matchbox component architecture all over the world, not only in our countries do we have this social gap and social segregation due to affordability, which is, by the way, new. If you zoom out, it is quite a new phenomenon. All these countries also have a housing affordability problem. Have you heard of, you look into all the developed countries and see how much more of your salary in percentage goes now into housing. Everybody is talking about unaffordable housing, whether you're in Denmark or Germany or anywhere. All the peripheries. So we are creating a new classification where those who can afford are also not happy with the architecture because they lose their human scale and their identity and orientation and nothing. Our individuality and difference is all swallowed by the common, and the other one who cannot afford are equally oppressed. So we are creating an urban form where you have two cities in one, and we've created a materiality where reinforced cement concrete is the vernacular, the new vernacular, and brick buildings all over the world are almost not being allowed anymore according to our man-made laws. Everywhere it's being used to only infill, not to build large domes and like what we have seen in cathedrals. Everyone is telling us that it cannot be done, although all the proofs are all around us. So these are very, very worrying topics, and why we call, despite all technological advances, why is the Homo sapien using per capita way more energy to survive, not even to thrive? What is going on, with all the resources we are doing? So this is the really, I'm happy to open with this topic and not go into sustainability, check, a list which you have to tick off, and you get a lot of points, but the whole thing, like a bit like Emperor's new clothes, there is a question there also about the Emperor's new green clothes. I mean, frankly, we know that things are not as green as our ancestors have been doing. So I used to ask myself, because this big urgency we have to save time in construction, I used to ask myself, what is the point of doing efficiently things that need not be done at all? And really, we have to start asking very basic questions. And I think because I asked those questions when I graduated 32 years ago, I probably developed a practice which itself is not sustainable, because it's going against the current habits, I would say. But I keep asking this all the time. I start from there. And one of the things I learned was by observing the materials. We talk a lot about building construction and materiality as it begins on the site, but actually it begins in the sourcing of materials. Not only what materials the architect chooses, but how the material is sourced. If the bricks are made locally like this, or if they are made in a factory, it makes a huge difference. If you just go into brick, green rating system, I don't know what the values are, but in most countries, there is one figure how many kilojoules bricks take. It's not like that. If it is made in our ancient way, it takes way less energy, because we don't build kilns. Our brick stacks are the kilns. Our thinnings from other plantations are the fuel. When the bricks are done, the field is the field. You don't do quarries, you take the earth that collected after every monsoon. This is very different consumption than bricks which are made in factories. So there is no qualitative differences given in those green rating systems. So I am not very, we have a lot to do in that respect, to understand really what material sourcing does. Lime, when it is produced like this, or bricks that are produced in those same stacks, are very, very different. And again, as I said, despite all the technological advances, modern bricks are using a lot of energy. They are making huge quarries. They've got many people tell you don't use brick, especially the mud supporters, because of how much energy goes in. But that one brick, if you do it correctly, it will be forever. Years later, somebody will come and dig our foundations and find them, because they will be still there. Once you burn earth, it is forever. So these are things not to be taken lightly. And you can see that communities who only do this, they source lime, they, just where you are, based on what was available, a whole lot of territorial impact has happened. So the material sourcing has a direct relationship and impact on the society and the communities and what they live from. A brick builder, maker, is not only living on brick, he's doing agriculture, because it's the same clay with which you get brick. And the thinnings of that has to be grown, so casuarina has to be grown. So they are also rice farmers, and in some season they are doing bricks. Now, if you only think of post-industrialization, that job is an 8-hour thing, then you have to pay everything so costly. And if tomorrow I don't buy bricks from him, they can't afford even the rice. Because we have work and life has been more holistic in our lives. So in India, I think we are adding to unaffordability if we don't develop holistically, keeping all of this in mind. And it's such a pity to throw the baby with the bathwater. So when I initially started producing projects from literally where what you have under your feet, the normal jargon is, and all the contractors and all, when as a young architect, I was told by everybody that it will be more expensive to A, make everything, B, to use your own. And they've even, I said, what, don't try to convince me that to eat my own mango is more expensive than to buy it from a shop, and cashew nuts. And they were even convincing me even that is true, because it is actually true. Because when because of the economics, and today I have a different perspective. I think the economics is wrong, because they are not counting all costs. They are not counting many bad impacts, which in European countries they started counting, and you start seeing that that type of product is actually very costly, but the costs are invisible to us. The collective is paying for the deterioration of other things. So I started more and more. One thing you do takes you to the next and the next. So I started, when I did my projects, I went to the origin of where it comes from, and the stone from where they were sourcing it. They are still hand sourcing it, and I always promoted, although the architecture I produced is very contemporary, the actual materiality and the way it is made, it is also very engineered, but I always tried to flaunt the skills that I discovered, and where I didn't see the skills, I tried to upgrade and show them what their forefathers made and how to go beyond. We should know more than our forefathers. That is the law of evolution. Anything that is worsening is not healthy. So through that approach, I mean, this is a temporary installation in Delhi, but you know, these granite slabs are self-supported on those other slabs, and they are held in loose cobble granite chips in the interiors because of the engineering. So when we took this down, all the pieces were used in another store, and all the floor was completely, the granite, the chips were given to the concrete makers and so on. There's so much we can do. People think in urban areas we are limited because we say, no, we are in a hurry. My projects have not had higher budgets or more time. Taking time doesn't mean delaying. Taking time is to think whether the time spent is producing a good thing or a bad thing. Otherwise, the whole time was wasted. So then, of course, when I, started my career, I would say my studio in Auroville, I had, of course, been influenced by Rajendra and Rupal Desai, who had produced, I had the good fortune to see their work, and that they were, I had seen that they were spanning roofs without using steel, self-supporting. And when I went to Auroville, I met another guru, I would say, of ceramic, which is Ray Meeker. And I told him that, look, I don't want to build with concrete, but I want to build more span than what they had done, because I thought if the product would be upped in quality by Ray, which he produced the first bunch of things for me, and we could build bigger spans. So through this kind of, my approach to sustainability is actually relying on engineering to be able to push the boundaries and produce way more square meters with the same resources. I'm not in favor of creating a morality between materials and saying this is a good material, that's a good. We are living in a polarized age. Everybody has one preference and hates another thing. But I feel as architects, we will always be site-specific. So it's good to know how to think about each material, whatever it is, you just use judiciously. And even high energy materials will be needed in the age of climate change, and we can't stop researching cement only because it's high consumption. In fact, the high consumption materials need even more research, which is why I did a lot of research in the end on cement and all that, because there you can really like you can really be much more conscious and judicious in how you apply. So the architecture that resulted was each project, there were many hands involved, and while you built knowledge, you also built community. This is a picture of myself. I want to show you straight out of college, trying to do the first job. And you can see how I don't know anything if you look at my face. But the point is, I want to encourage all the younger practitioners also, because you can't limit what you're going to do to what you know already. Because the past knowledge is very important, but it will not suffice in the way the future is coming at us. We will need imagination, we will need to create new things. And so we have to push the boundaries. And if we don't know something, that's what I used to tell myself, there are other people in the world who know that thing. So I hope that the future will be about collaboration and not only about competition. And through these methods, I produced these things in the way they do them, you know. Not in the kilns. I observed what people were doing, and I tried to integrate this into their culture and to enrich the local economy and figure out the things that the engineers hadn't supported me with in those days, to find craftsmen and others to do load tests. And you know, sometimes when you are naive, it also helps, because you just don't get discouraged easily and you keep going. And then it led to a whole lot of architecture over the last 3 decades. Even the bricks I've used here are the Achakal bricks, which are 1 inch thick. They are still being produced in Tamil Nadu. And actually, this is the kind of brick, it's easy to hold in a hand. It doesn't tire you out. It's all, this is in the human scale. And the more I got to know, I started appreciating and realized that architecture is also built by people. It's used by people. The voids, the parts you didn't build, affect the users. And the part you do build affect the people who make architecture. And that's their whole life. That's their 8 hours of job. Even the people who do the electricity and the cables, half of us are producing things for architecture. And all of us are using it. So I started realizing, I came to know that all the pots, you know, that the Pongal cooking pots, which nobody buys anymore, etc. I started, you know, I realized that the livelihood of people are threatened by urbanism of artisans in India. And I thought, what can the artisans make? I don't want to buy these pots and decorate my garden or put in the museum, because I'm not a nostalgic person. I am a 2-3 generation uprooted Bengali growing up in Bombay. I happen to, for me, I'm just saying, I'm not questioning vernacular. I'm just saying that I didn't come out of a nostalgic perspective, but out of an engineering perspective, and realizing if you want to combat poverty and affordability issues, use simple formula. Use what you have abundance of. If you try to use what you don't have, you will become poorer. If you use what you have a lot of, better find a way to use it. Whether it is humans, if there are a lot of people who don't have work, use them. If there are a lot of people, a lot of materials lying around you don't know how to use it. There are things which we have used in the past, use in a new way. So in this case, we have used, this is Laurie Baker's influence on me, where I had seen also he was doing filler slabs, and I thought, I have an engineering mind, and I thought if you increase the filler, you can save so much more steel. Here I'm saving 2 bars out of 3. And this is a small span, but if these are to test. But eventually I was doing these tests for larger spans elsewhere. So it was all about one experiment empowers you to do the next and so on. So I did, you know, there are sometimes vaulted forms allow you to build without needing any structural steel. But because of that, you cannot use the roof. Some other instances, you can build, here you have to use some steel every 2.5 feet, but there is still insulating. So and then this filler slab allows me to make intermediate floors. And there I also save some steel. So I started creating a vocabulary of 6 or 7 type of roofs only in this house. And this is actually my own house. And then I was simultaneously researching ferrocement. Also, how much can you reduce the square meters of a house? Enlarge the verandas. The rooms are only 7 feet narrow with alcoves and so on, So, but prior to that, I lived for 10 years in this very simple hut. And I realized when I talk about time as a resource, I think the motorbike and the solar panel were the most costly parts of my life, and because bicycle was too local for me to find out all these things. So I realized this life I had done, being a city girl, I didn't expect. It was more like a Jungle Book experience for me. When people were living like in huts, it was charming. I didn't feel something is missing. But it was literally tied with rope and, you were living like that. And I just realized, actually, when I talk about time as a resource, this is also an example, If you take a round wood, you can use a 3-year-old tree. If you take a timber section, you need 25 years to cut a rectangle out of a round. Why do we need to cut a rectangle? So that if you do mass production, which we are not doing, most of us, if you do mass production, it will be easy for people down the line to use the same drawing, and only for that, you need that many years more. And it makes wood that much less of a realistic option to use as a renewable resource. So these are some reflections of, and of having lived like that myself, and building similar things for others. I realized that most of all, our own time is a resource, and other people's time are also a resource. So when I started doing, like for example, it's an urban eco-community housing, I was always trying to help push Auroville to take an urban step and not to sprawl around. I was, this project is called Urban Eco-Community. And in this, we were trying to encourage people, and I think even in urban areas everywhere, sometimes people don't have the minimum money to take a bank loan. But if you give them something to do, where we can call it sweat equity, that they have something they generated against which the rest of the money can come and liberate them from the housing problem. But if you don't allow people to participate, technologies can be quite alienating. You have to only give it to large companies and all. In some instances, technologies could be preventing people from doing things. So I always try to strike a good negotiation between high-tech, low-tech, man-made, machine-made, etc., so that technology is not the reason that people can't do it, because they need licenses and so on. And so through this kind of methods, rammed earth, this is a housing project where the idea was to create connections, very affordable project, but part of the affordability strategy socially is to design the technology to enable people's participation. Some things are needing a lot of knowledge, but a lot of things can be done by anyone. And inside of these houses, there are people of very different incomes, but the actual apartments are very small. Actually, the Auroville standard of a apartment is 30 square meter average. So within it, we were trying to compensate for the small area by sharing a lot of rooms. So sharing is another area with time also, where you can share chores. You can, eco-housing is also a concept for India, I think would be fantastic, because we already have a high sense of community, but we are not tapping it in the BHK approach to housing. So anyway, then this one was a very radical experiment, which was again supported by Ray Meeker, who had pioneered a technology that like mud houses can be fired in situ. For me, what was attractive in this technology was that you don't even need cement. Because if we have a very high rainfall and earth structures are quite vulnerable, and I did want to explore the way to cook them in situ. The method in the concept behind it is that you build a mud house with mud bricks and mud mortar, and you design it as an oven, so in the bottom, oxygen can come in, and the whole thing is designed for combustion. The idea is to fill it up with bricks and to cook it, because I did a lot of research in brick and brick kilns and the efficiencies in material production. And I found out that 40% of ovens, 40% of the heat that is generated for baking bricks in ovens are used by the oven itself. 40% goes into the wall, each firing for nothing. And this is an aspect of Rainmaker's method, and I think so many people all over rural India know how to use the brick and make bricks. And I did my PhD on this, in fact, to give Ray's work a push, because he didn't want to continue after the experimentation phase. But in any case, I have done a lot of radical techniques where in this kind of project, you cook it for 3 or 4 days, and later on, you get a brick house that you have to waterproof. And on the other hand, you can look at housing as a producer of local economy and local building materials rather than a consumer, because about 75% of what you produce are products inside the kiln. So Ray had himself produced all kinds of things. Ceramic is very important architecture, from tiles to wash basins and all kinds of things. So this is a no-budget project, Homes for Homeless Children. So most of my architecture doesn't have any style or anything. It comes a lot based on the same climatic zone, according to which materials were brought in, and what its impact was. So I would just move now to some examples. Again, as I said, these are time-intensive projects, but it's not like the end product is slow. We are also putting the human time of construction into the equation of the socio-economic and environmental broad picture. And ferrocement is another area where I have researched a lot, I think almost 25 years, where chicken mesh replaces big steel diameter bars, and there are some amount of very thin diameter bars. But I've been doing a lot of research, including natural fibers, glass fiber, all kind of things with ferrocement. But typically 1 inch is what the element is, 2.5 centimeters, and also for up to half its size, we can also go. And I think technologies and further research could really optimize all of this. It's also very lightweight. It is seismic, is much higher ductile properties. And so this is something I've been working on. This is an example for a modular home where the final elements are also, this is after the tsunami happened. Actually, I did a lot of research in disaster relief to try to see what can we do in prefab and still make it modular so that people can carry it, and the finishes are also included into the element through oxides, etc. And this is can be easily, you can have a house in a week or in that kind of time span, and the products can be made in the backyards of masons' homes, and they can be done as and how they have time in the weekends and so on. And kitchens, etc., can be embedded. There is a toilet unit on the right. This is in the Venice Biennale. We have shown it full scale, 1-to-1. And I even got some of these load tests done in Germany of these elements. You can see instead of breaking that they bend. So this is the kind of direction, and most of all, these are very rapid, much faster than the typical construction. But what I want to say is that when I talk about time as a resource, I'm starting with the amount of time I have put in to build that in 1 week. I have done years of work to make all of this go. So, but sometimes the architect is not able to give time in the way that projects are budgeted. So if we want to go for if we want to allow the architect's time to become more available, if you give every architect twice the amount of time, for instance, you can imagine how much other resources they will save and how much better the architecture will be. Anyway, these are some images from also in non-modular, like in situ construction, where I have used cardboard, this recycled Amazon packaging to do form work, to time is running out. Okay, so I have tried to use whatever is there, because the product is so light. Through origami crease patterns, I could find efficient forms that with so little steel. This is a shelter prototype only. So I am testing a lot in one-to-one. The housing has not yet seen the light of day, but there are many ideas like this I have already researched. I will, I had a solo show in Denmark in the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art, and they gave me 4 years to produce that exhibition. So I have some of these images are from all my studio and all what I've done with urban waste. I'm going to just show some pictures because there's no time. But I have also used for temporary pavilions, etc. I have been using books, magazines, whatever it is, whatever you find literally locally, and producing architecture with that. But I'm also using urban waste in the process of construction, sizing windows according to what you have. There are sometimes glass, broken chai cups, etc. Just using whatever you have. And also in the method of, as a professor, I'm also trying to, in order to empower students, I'm encouraging the process of thinking with the hands and one-to-one opportunities. Real confrontation with real scale, real people, real places, real materials. And that's the only way to go. And these kind of things that they do, these are students of the AA in Auroville. They've done a watchtower. But in all of these projects, they've come in. Sometimes we have 2 days. This is in Mexico. We have filled sand and cement inside sand and water back and produced masonry out of that. Or for events, etc., just stacking water bottles, learning architecture. This is in Sept with fabric. It was called urban fabric structures. So this kind of thing only works if you bring the artisans and machines and everything into the studio and do that. And even when I produce exhibitions, these are some in Venice, I have also tried to continue the research that practice doesn't allow through the exhibition budget, and to test ideas, to follow some of those through participatory processes, empowering students to build with limited to whatever they can build, and do all that in the execution. So many buildings, also public buildings, have been done in this kind of, with these strategies, which are where we centrally recognize time as a resource. And I will just end with just a few images, because I have since a year been appointed as the head of urban design for Auroville. And I had, of course, prior to that, 3 decades of work already in the urban dimension of Auroville, which I'm going to publish soon in this book. I had the good fortune to collaborate for 17 years with the chief architect. I was also involved in getting the master plan approved. But what many people don't know, it was seen 50 years ago as a car-free city, and it had rethought radically from urbanism to the architecture, all the things that have to be holistically, radically rethought. And so somehow this was the original plan by Roger Angers, and now that barren land has been, already, looks like this. And up until now, a lot of things were happening very ad hoc, but the Matri Mandir and the city center was realized as per plan. And one of the urban elements of a high density horizontal, not a tower, another approach to high rise, is what I am presently developing. It's called Line of Goodwill. And I'm just showing you images. But in the method of working, this is Jan Gale. He's, a lot of the work is also being done in academic context with other practitioners. And I'm a big believer in collaboration. And the future should be to shift from competition to collaboration, and to involve, to really hurry up and make sure that India gets its urbanism right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anupama, for that beautiful talk and sharing your ideas, thought-provoking ideas on sustainability. Yeah? We would like,
We would like to request Mr. Gaurav Arora from Jacqua Group and Ms. Parul Jhaveri to please felicitate the amazing Anupama Kundoo.
By the way, Anupama, your house looks exceptional. Yeah. Sure. She's inviting me.